This is a story about the Antietam farm. The idea was, with respect to relationship with the Indians, that from the Antietam Creek to the Conococheague Creek, and up the Potomac River, they called it the Patamac in those days, and that the idea was that that was going to be reserved as Indian land, sort of like, and that there would be no white intrusion on it. But lo and behold, they began to have intrusion. And there was a fellow named Israel Friend, who was actually a Swede, but he was married to an Indian woman. And he come up with the idea that the Indians would deed all this land to him. So then they would say, it's already in ownership, it's not available for anyone else. So what they did is they started out at the Antietam Creek, as far as an Indian can sling an arrow out of a bow, a certain number of hence to the west and so on, but all with Indian shoots. And later on, they discovered that was something like 300 square miles. But it said, is hereby deeded to Israel Friend in his heirs, if demanded, he provides 2 ears of corn for each of the members of the following tribes. And they were and what he did, it's not, I have a copy of it. I have a copy of the deed. It's not on paper, it's on birch bark. And in those days, there was only one county in here, and it was Prince George's County. And the congresswoman from there, very close, Gladys Noon Spellman, who was once president of NACO and a very close friend, she got me a copy of that deed. And see, it's very famous for how they calculated the deed. And the tension continued because there's a question about the slaves. Now, across the river from the farm is West Virginia, and West Virginia pulled out of the Confederacy or never got into Confederacy. They were anti-slave. So this entire area became famous early. And then, lo and behold, there's a riffle across the river, so the river can be crossed by cannons and so the Confederates invaded, went through Sharpsburg, and there was and then the Battle of Antietam. The canal, the building of the canal was part of the farm history. The supervisor of building the crown had rented that house because he's on the hill and he could keep track of the works. And during the Civil War, the Confederates, Jackson, came up on the canal. Came up and got on the battlefield at the last minute to save the Confederates from total destruction. So it's a very, very historic place. It really marks the end of slavery. Abraham Lincoln came and visited. We know that he visited the farm across the way. We have pictures of that. All of us are interested in preserving every ounce of the history that's in that farm. It circulates all the way. All the story, for example, George Washington started to build a canal. He wanted the entrance into the Ohio River, and the Ohio River drains down to New Orleans, and he wanted to save the shipping for the coast. And he owned a lot of land which he had received as a commission for his service. He was an officer in the British Army with the British generals. So every inch of it is very historic. And we've taken very good care of it. There was a proposal to put a gigantic power line. And we went up there one day and found the sticks, and we discovered that the power companies had the right to run their lines anywhere and didn't have to tell anybody anything. So I got involved in a very fierce campaign with the power company.